Wait for introduction.
İyi akşamlar sevgili arkadaşlar, tüm AIPA üyeleri. Yine muhteşem bir etkinlikle devam edeceğiz. Bu AIPA Tomorrow Meetings'lerin ilk İngilizce ve uluslararası Tomorrow Meeting olacak. Hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Şimdi ben bu akşamki konuşmanın, Emilia'nın konuşmasının etkinliğinin moderatörlüğünü yapacağım. Bu imkanı verdikleri için, bunu teklif ettikleri için AIPA Yönetim Kurulu'ndan sonsuz teşekkür ediyorum. Emilia, many thanks for accepting our invitation to speak today. And Gökhan Bey, I think we will start with a promotional video, right?
Yes, please, our friends will present in just a second.
Bu video için çok teşekkür ederiz Gökhan Bey. Sayın Başkanımız Zafer Bey'in konuşmasından önce küçük bir not. Konuşma İngilizce, Emilia'nın konuşması İngilizce olacak ama soru cevaplar isterseniz İngilizce, isterseniz Türkçe olabilir. Hiçbir şekilde çekinmeyin. Türkçe sorarsanız da soru ve cevapları biz çevireceğiz. Sayın Başkanım buyurun.
Çok teşekkürler Mehtap Hanım. Ben müsaade ederse arkadaşlarımız İngilizce devam edeceğim. Thank you very much, dear Mehtap. Good evening, everyone. Dear AIPA family and esteemed guests, you are all welcome. As you have just seen in the short promotional film, as AIPA, we have a total of 17 fields of study ranging from education, economy, health, culture, foreign policy to law. As an association in the last 10 months since our establishment, we increased the number of our members from 11 to 70. The number of our qualified members will continue to increase day by day. We held 15 tomorrow meetings, conferences to increase our knowledge of artificial intelligence, and today we are holding the 16th one. We will increase this number to 20 by end of this year. We have signed one cooperation protocol so far to take steps and collaborate on artificial intelligence. By the end of the year, we will sign 2 more protocols with 2 important universities in Turkey. Until now, we have participated as speakers in 10 national and international events, especially in our universities. Last month, we attended Dubai JITEX Technology Fair, one of the top technology fairs in the world, and provided various contacts as well as several fruitful visits. In January, we are going to CES technology fairs in the US. We conducted and shared our research on perception of artificial intelligence in society and perception of artificial intelligence in businesses, which are the most comprehensive studies in the field of artificial intelligence in Turkey so far. We have also started the work of our third research, perception of artificial intelligence in education. We have shared the views of our associations with the public by participating in TV and radio programs 32 times so far. Yes, we did those with our friends in just 10 months. We are just getting started. Dear Emilia, if you allow me, I would like to give a brief information about the artificial intelligence potential in Turkey. Last month, our government took a big step by announcing the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy documents. Now, with these documents, the Republic of Turkey has a powerful country. We have a population 84 million. The average age of our country is 32. At the same time, there are 26 million Z generation in our country. Only the Z generation population living in our country is more than the population of 143 countries in the world. Young people in our country have a great interest in technology. If we can transform this interest into more information, I believe that we will be one of the few countries in artificial intelligence. As I end my words here, I would like to thank everyone who contribute to realization of these events, especially dear Mehtap, and of course our very valuable guest, and dear Emilia. And I look forward to what you talk about the European Union and artificial intelligence. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Zafer. As Emilia, as you have heard, AIPA had done amazing things just in 10 months. As Zafer mentioned already, one of the amazing things about Turkey is its young and dynamic population, I think, which is sometimes scary for European Union because there's an unbelievably high quality workforce, and especially young population is amazing. And the AIPA is one of these examples, what was achieved just in 10 months. Welcome everyone. It is really a great pleasure to be with you today. And Emilia, thank you so much again for accepting our invitation to talk. I will try to very briefly introduce Emilia. It is very difficult to introduce her in short sentences because she had done so much. She has such a CV. So I would just summarize some of the things that she had done in life so far, and she continues. So Emilia is a doctor. She holds a PhD degree. She is the Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer at Black Swan Luxembourg, which is a spin-off University of Luxembourg, which she co-founded in 2015. She was previously holding several positions as Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer at Insert GIA, which is a security organization in Luxembourg. And she has been working in many multinational companies in AI roles, including PricewaterhouseCoopers in Luxembourg. Emilia has over 15 years of artificial intelligence experience in the business market, but also as a researcher and as consultant. She has edited 7 volumes of artificial intelligence books. She has more than 20 scientific journal papers. And also she has been collaborating with World Economic Forum, Atomic Energy Commission, and many others. She's a TED speaker, and she's regularly delivering his keynote speeches to OECD, to European Commission, and to other institutions. She is one of the co-organizers of European Standardization Committee about AI, and she is the member of the European Observatory of the IT standardization, and she's also an expert for many years for European Commission on artificial intelligence subjects. As you have seen, I can't even summarize enough the things that Emilia had done, but I want to mention one fun fact about Emilia. I met Emilia in a social event, which was dedicated to the women board members. So it was a after work social event for the female board members. And Emilia, she presented to the audience, which were women board members, about how to do wedding cakes using artificial intelligence. I can say that this was one of the most amazing and interesting presentations about artificial intelligence, and we learned about making wedding cakes using AI. So after this short introduction, Emilia, just a brief introduction about the subject. Emilia will be focusing today on European Union artificial intelligence standardization and certification. I think the subject is very close to our hearts and to our minds in Turkey. Why? Not only because Turkey is trying to enter the EU, it's a candidate country for EU, but also because Turkey is member of the Union of Mediterranean countries, and also there is an unbelievably important trade and commerce relationship between Turkey and EU. Just to summarize some facts, Turkey is EU's 6th biggest trade partner, and the EU is by far Turkey's the largest import and export partner, and also as well as EU is the main source of investments for Turkey. So Turkey cannot say, okay, I don't care about EU artificial intelligence standardization, because we are a country which is selling a lot to EU, which are buying a lot from EU. So whatever happens in EU is also very close to our hearts and minds. Without further ado, I will leave the floor to Emilia. Emilia, the floor is yours.
Mehtap,
At the end, we would...
Sorry, Emilia, let me interrupt you, Mehtap. So I see that you are really excited. So maybe you can share some very, very brief information about yourself for the ones who do not know you, exactly who you are. So you are one of us. Please share some brief information about you. And then Emilia, please take the floor.
Sure. Thank you, Gökhan Bey. So I was always very interested in the subject of artificial intelligence. So I learned that Turkey has established such an organization. So I became a member. I'm a member of AIPA that I'm very proud of. Other than this, I'm currently working as Chief Risk Officer of an American bank, and I'm covering the countries such as UK, Luxembourg, and Zurich, so Switzerland. And in addition to my Chief Risk Officer role, there are some subjects that I love talking about, writing about, and presenting. And with some other colleagues also here, we have done some trainings to board members and others about AI, but also ESG, a very important subject, environmental social governance, and many others. Before Luxembourg now, it will be almost 13 years. I have worked in the United Kingdom banks, English banks, including Barclays and Lloyds Banking Group in London. And before it, I was working in Istanbul in HSBC, always in risk management. and I'm originally from Ankara. So, but of course, my heart always belongs to, I think my childhood memories and heart belongs a lot to Turkey, as you can imagine. So, Gökhan Bey, this is the short introduction about me.
Thank you, Mehtap. So, Emilia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mehtap, for the kind introduction and providing details for my journey to AI. And also, it is a pleasure to be here and witness the great development you did as an association in only 10 months. Mehtap mentioned many of your achievements, but I see there are many more to come even. So I will start a presentation on the UI standardization. The insights that I will provide, they are provided as president of the National Standardization Bureau Committee in Luxembourg. So I'm the president, the head of delegation, the Luxembourg Standardization Delegation in international and European level. So I will disclose the information which is public. Starting on the UI standardization, I will first present a statement of the purpose of this talk. So the purpose of the hearing document and the talk is to offer a high-level view on aspects within AI standardization and also on the EU AI legislative framework, because the legislative frameworks doesn't dictate but provides the guidelines for standardization. So I compiled a number of normative documents and articles on AI, and the main focus was, as you aligned with your association, on societal and business-related implications. The presentation, of course, is intended for dissemination only within the limits of the Artificial Intelligence Policy Association Turkey, and where applicable, the public domain external materials they are credited, and links are provided in order to allow referring to the respective originating work for the ones that want to have more details or would like to go deeper on the topic. So that's just the statement of purpose of today's intervention. The content is shaped around EU AI standardization. As mentioned, I will start first with a brief introduction on the European Artificial Intelligence Policy, because this sets up the artificial intelligence strategy for Europe and the regulations. And the setting up of the strategy and regulation is done through policies. Then the standardization, it provides the technical support for the UI policies and regulations. So I will just provide a short introduction where we come from. As you mentioned, as national strategy are foremost importance, the EU strategy is also one of the, let's say, main elements of building standardization. But you will see that this strategy that you mentioned for Turkey will have a really important role also on standardization at national level, because we start at national level and then we go to the European level. So going on the EU AI policy, I will give a little bit of background where it started. I had the chance of joining the European Commission in 2017. In December, we had the ICT Proposals Day in Budapest, and we had 5,000 academics and industry representatives from top-notch industry from all over the world, which were invited, and I was in the panel of AI strategy. So at that point, artificial intelligence STEM was not used that much in Europe. In fact, it was even banned for a large period of time. And the question of the European Commission was, should we go back to the usage of the term, because industry is using it at a large scale. So artificial intelligence was reintroduced, and in April 2018, an AI strategy for Europe was voiced by European Commission, Direction General, General Direction Connect. Then we had a coordinated plan and several other interesting publications. The purpose, as we see it from 2018, started with the ethics guidelines. The Commission appointed a high-level expert group, and this high-level expert group focused what is important for Europe and not only for the European space, because the participants, they were from the larger global space. And after having this ethics guidelines, the industry voiced, we need to be pragmatic. It is interesting that you are writing guidelines on ethics, but how can we use it in business? So then the second step was an assessment list. How do we assess artificial intelligence system, software system, to be trustworthy? So that's the ALTAI, which appeared in 2019. And then we had the white paper on AI, a data strategy for Europe, which is really important because AI without data doesn't function. And then we had different others, the Council of Europe, and the assessment list for trustworthy AI was published in a final format in 2020. It's a bit of history, just to create a small introduction. On the ethical AI, and I think you already had some talks on that, there is a guidelines, ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, which was done by a group of independent experts and released in 2019. There, what we observed in these guidelines, the definition of AI was challenging, and it still is. So I bring it to your attention, knowing that we start in 2019, but the definition is still challenging, and we are 2 years after. So the EU AI strategy after 2019, after this release of white papers, publications, and assessment list for the system, the Commission wanted to hear back. So there was a feedback period from the Q1 January 2020 till January 2021. The Commission listened to all actors, independent. I imagine that also your association contributed to that, even if it was not at the current form, but I'm sure you contributed as I'm still from ETAP. And then they concluded with an impact assessment of the AI strategy and the AI white paper. Industry wanted concrete results. So in April 2021, the EU AI Act proposal, it is a proposal from the European Commission for horizontal legal framework, was issued. Now we are in November 2021, and what we're expecting is that by 2024, to have actually a EU AI legislation. And what does it mean? The EU AI legislation is legislative part, but it doesn't have any technical specification. All the technical specifications are expected in the form of harmonized standards, harmonized European standards. And I will mention why they are important, because in the legal framework, only European standardization organization can be cited. So even if we have international acts, international standards, they can't be cited by the European law. And in order to have certification, we need standards. And the easiest form of certification that we can think of is the CE mark. The CE mark will include an AI assessment. So the AI Act proposes a regulatory framework, really important, because this is the starting point of standardization and of establishing the requirements and what needs to be done. So I will not go that much maybe on all the details which come with this, because this is a legal framework. What we need to observe is that the current approach is sectorial. We have sectorial safety legislation. The approach which is introduced by the legal framework is a horizontal. So the standards will be not domain specific, aeronautics, medical devices. They will be horizontal for all domains alike. This is new also for standards. There are not that many which are horizontal. So standardization will be a very important vector, but from the standardization perspective, this is a very challenging topic because you need to cover all domains alike. And we need to base ourselves on a risk-based application. This means there are high-risk applications which have compulsory assessment ex ante, so before putting them in the market. And we have self-assessment, which is not mandatory, but it's nice to have to build trust for non-high-risk applications. I will go into details of this pyramid once they relate with the standardization work. Now, there is a window of opportunity in identifying the terms and having clear definitions. The first remark, the first feedback which was received from the EU Act proposal was that definitions are not clear. But as you saw in standardization, since 2019, the definition, we are challenging to make them clear. So this remains still a challenging point. And differentiating low risk and high risk application, it's still subject to consultation, and it's subject to debate in the European Parliament. There will be a revision of the Product Liability Directive and of the national liability rules. So this doesn't concern only the European Union, it concerns the European space at large. And then we have the European Commission, which has a list. This will be, again, subject to debate. So the proposal from the European Commission is risk-based, and our application becomes high risk, for example. It is identified as high risk if both the target sector and the intended use are high risk. And I will not go too much into the details. There are applications such as biometric recognition would always be considered high risk. So this would be a bit what it happens in the legislative side. And now let us see why this legislative part is important. So the UEI Act, the horizontal legal framework, further will evolve to reference standards. And as mentioned, we have international standards, we have ISO, and we have IEC, which is more on the electrotechnic part. And they have also joint technical committees. So GTC, it means Joint Technical Committee between ISO and IEC. So there is common work in order to speed up and to avoid duplication of effort. There are other organizations which are more domain-specific, international standard organizations like ITUT and others. In Europe, we have specific organization bodies. And when I mean Europe, that concerns Turkey, of course. CEN and CENELEC, they are two European standardization organization where, and I will give the list of member states, Turkey is also among the founders and among the active participants. So the creation of the CENELEC of a specific work in AI came late. We had till, and I will give you a bit of background, we had till recently this year, so it's starting 2019, a focus group on AI. A focus group we can discuss in the focus group, but we don't do standards. And in this focus group of CEN and CENELEC on AI, we're discussing what should be a roadmap for AI standardization in Europe. And that took almost till April this year. We published the roadmap. First, it was circulated internally in the European institutions, and then it was largely published. And the conclusion was we need to have, as we have at international level, a joint technical committee, because there exists quite a number of joint technical committees at European level. It received the number 21, the next after the last number which was used. And it is called Joint Technical Committee 21 in artificial intelligence. The scope of this, and I will go further on that, it is to introduce a support for all the requirements which are in the legal, let's say, legal directives and policies, and also on the policies of the European space. So if here, for example, in the UEI Act, we identify risk assessment, this is one of the identified requirements. Risk assessment exists in ISO IEC. So how would we communicate with the international level? For this purpose, CEN has an agreement, it's called the Vienna Agreement, with ISO. And the agreement says whenever we have new work being done in ISO, it needs to inform first and foremost the partners, which are SEN in this case. There are other partners also like ETSI and other non-standard organizations like IEEE. So every time a new standard in AI, for example, for our field, is published in ISO, through the Vienna Agreement, we receive a reference in SEN. In Senelec, there is the Frankfurt Agreement between Senelec and IEC. So whenever work is being done in a specific field of interest for Senelec, it is sent through the Frankfurt Agreement. But it was difficult to have two channels of communication, Vienna and Frankfurt Agreement. So Senelec decided, if at the international level, ISO and IEC, they are working together in AI, we should do the same. We should not create separate efforts. And the GTC 21 was formed in 1st of June this year. This is not the only European standardization organization. Thinking about specific domain, there exists also ETSI. ETSI is concerned more on the communication side, and the only aspect they were treating so far, it was securing artificial intelligence. So that means all the threats, attacks, all that is concerned with security. All the security aspects are treated in ETSI at the European level. Both of them in the EU legislation, Senelec and ETSI, can be cited by the law. And usually we should not have an overlap between them. So if, for example, ETSI studies security of AI, this should not be replicated, ideally, or it should be adopted and additional terms added. And now thinking, yes, we do this standardization, we have it at the European level, we use these agreements, we brought it in Europe, we have something to be cited by the law. What is the impact on the market? After the law comes into force, it is expected not sooner than early 2024, then let's say products, organizations, they would like to become certified as being compliant with, or they are passing conformity assessment according to some specification given in the standards. But this can't be done even if the standards are published, if we do not have a test certification authority. There will be no invention. The test certification authority in Turkey, as in all other European countries, they exist and they are available by domain. So what will be new? In the certification of system which use also AI, for example, there will be new additional tests. So even if you have, I'm just giving an example, ISO certification 27001, which is the most common certification for security, if you have an AI component, you will have to pass additional tests to remain certified. So the testing certification authority will appoint private entities as, let's say, certification laboratories or certification bodies. So certification and testing is done in the private domain. There is a collaboration public-private. The testing certification authority remains the same, no extra authorities added. What it will be new, it will be the certification and testing facilities. So that's just to give you a glimpse how this functions. Now, if we go to the AI standardization, the main topic of today's talk, the standardization, we mentioned that it provides the technical support. How we engage with standardization, and I'm speaking here about AI standards, but it can apply to various other domains. First of all, as individual member, if you, as member of AIPA, you'd like to engage also in standardization, if you're not already there, you need to contact the national level. There is the TNS, which is the TNE in Turkey. I cite here ILNAS because this is our organization in Luxembourg. but you can contact ENE and you register as expert, or then you can become also a delegate, so to represent the country at European or international level. You can decide to remain at a national level and work only on the mirror committee. So you have the head of delegation, which updates regularly all the members about European standards, if you are in the European Standard Mirror Committee, or about the international one. Or you can register also as an active contributor, but you need to provide contribution to comment and provide editorial support and also contribution at the CENELEC or ETSI level. Then if you feel that this is not enough, because maybe for your market or for your interest, this is not covering fully, you can also register for the ISO IEC. It is usually advised first to act at the national level to understand the functioning of the processes, pass through some trainings, and then you move to the European or international level. You should know that not always, you don't need always to pass through the national levels of standardization, although it is highly recommended that you inform and you keep a regular contact with them. There are other technical standards which are like the IEEE. This is not a standardization organization, it's an international engineering organization, really known also in academia, and they release under Creative Commons licensed material. All the materials which are released by CENELEC and ISO and IEC, they are accessible only after you purchase them. So being active, it will allow you to have access for free in some sense to this content. If not, you'll need to pay if you would like to be following the standards with your own products or your own activity. So at the international level, now going to our topic, specifically to artificial intelligence. The activities of the subcommittee 42, they are done in the Joint Technical Committee 1. And this subcommittee, when you think subcommittee, you'll think it is a simple setting. It was established in 2017, and it was small at that time. The first plenary in April 2018 had 31 participant members, and Luxembourg was one of them, and 16 which were just observing. So really few people were participating and few countries were represented, as you see it on the map. Some of them, they are larger countries, so you see a large spread on the map. When we speak this year, we had the plenary ending on the 29th of October. We had 260 experts, which had an opinion, of course, on all the work which is being done. And the plenary had to last 2 weeks. So we work day and night, and we have sessions during the night in order to have all the territories covered. So we have in the night, early in the morning, and in the afternoon. So we have slots from 11 to 1, and then 7 to 9, and then 1 in the afternoon, our time, till 6, just for you if you'd like to engage further. There are now 45 liaison relationships, so that means there is strong communication with the European Commission, with the OECD, with all important institutions globally and locally. Going to the standards, so now we go on the more technical side of the work. The activities of the AI subcommittee gave place to 9 published standards, 5 which are related to big data, because we had legislation not only in Europe, but in different territories on GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. So big data was a hot topic and there was a need to act fast. So in the big data world, we had, first of all, the first standard, which is always done in any field, is overview and vocabulary. Let's have the same understanding of the terms. Then the second step is a framework. What is the process? For example, for big data, what is the reference architecture? What is the process? And the process is released usually after we analyze use cases. So different use cases of big data reference architecture for AI were submitted. And based on these use cases and on the common vocabulary, which was released in 2019, so you see 2018 the use cases, 2019 the vocabulary. Even if we had use cases, we couldn't agree on the vocabulary. There were still different terms used. And then we had the framework. The framework, this is the useful part. This is a process, but it's still not technical enough. If we would like to go to the lower levels, we need part 3, which was released in 2020, which is the reference architecture. So then we have all the components, the architectural components, not only the algorithm and its characteristics. And then there was this work, and it's still ongoing. What is the standardization roadmap? What do we want to achieve on big data? So the standardization roadmap, it should be a living document, because now you see there are 4 standards published. Do we need more? Are they useful? Do they need modifications? Usually they last for 3 to 5 years, but if they require modifications, in that case, the standards roadmap, this working group should act and should relaunch new parts for example, for big data in general or for the reference architecture. In artificial intelligence, we have 4, I mentioned here 3, but there are 4 which are published. One, it was really recently published. 3 of them, they were published in 2021 and 1 in 2020. And I will pass for one of them. The one which is important and started early, it was overview of trustworthiness in artificial intelligence. Because trustworthiness, it is an aspect which is of concern for the stability of the solutions, safety, and also because all the representatives, usually they are big tech companies or big companies, because they have, let's say, assigned representatives, so their function is only to follow standards on a daily basis. But now we have also SME, small and medium enterprise. I'm coming from that angle. And I'm also the liaison with the SME, the European SME, Digital SME Alliance, and the Small Business Standard Association, which is all European, but also we have a worldwide footprint. And identifying the trustworthiness was foremost important for all these actors. So that was released first. Then this is a general document, and we'll pass for that. Then it was considered, but in artificial intelligence, one of the main aspects is neural networks. So the robustness of neural networks will concern most of us. So that was the next document, assessment of the robustness of neural networks. It's an overview. It's still not going enough in details, and there are 23 other standards under development. So you can imagine how many are concerned with trustworthiness. The working group, which is dedicated to trustworthiness, has most of the work of the entire standardization committee. And we have use cases. I contributed to those also, and bias in AI system and AI-aided decision-making. You will ask yourself, why do we have here AI systems, and then we have also AI-aided decision-making? Because there was no agreement on the term AI systems, and some of the representatives wanted to have represented the decision-making as a separate term. So when their system are evaluated, or well, the AI processes are evaluated, we'll make a differentiation between systems and the decision-making process. So this is what we have currently published in the international level. And I think I have it further on, the overview of the trustworthiness. But I will go in those details once we go to understand how this transposes in Europe. In Europe, AI standardization is not left only to the standardization commissions. The European Commission has releases on a regular basis annually a standardization roadmap. As you have the national strategy, and it includes also standardization, There is also the European Commission which creates this in order to have a unified view and avoid fragmentation or standardization. But this is not exclusive. The European Commission every year releases the European roadmap on standardization, but also Germany, for example, I give here example, they have their own standardization roadmap. So some member states like Germany, France, and even some others like UK, they have their own strategy, even if we have a common one. And passing to the international context to the European, I will then conclude with some challenges and we go in the details of the texts. Feel free to interrupt if ever you have questions. You can do so, but I leave it up to you. In the European context of standardization, the last roadmap, we have it in February 2021. It is published in the official journal, so it is not only an informative document like the white paper, like all these ethic guidelines, trustworthy guidelines. This is official journal, so it is a formal document. And this year, the Commission stated that they will ask the development of standards to address the trustworthiness of artificial intelligence system. Where do they ask? To the European standardization bodies. And here they also specify that in the aspects which will be addressed, this was known since February, will be accountability, transparency, robustness, we saw it also at international level, accessibility and disability inclusiveness, fairness, privacy, and ethical use. If you have a look back of what we saw at the international level, not all these aspects are covered yet. And some, they are not even on the discussion. For example, I will take privacy or disability, accessibility and disability inclusiveness. This is not a topic which is under discussion at the international level. So what happens in this case, the European standardization bodies will need to react. I'm also part of the strategic advisory group of the European standardization CEN and CENELEC, and I'm in charge of transposing this roadmap. So that's some work I'm doing there. Now we saw this is how it functions internationally, European. Let's take trustworthiness. So we had here a term. We had robustness, we had privacy, fairness, accountability. These terms, if we take the international standards, and I will refer to one published standards, this is a technical report. The document only surveys what exists in trustworthiness, but it doesn't specify the level of trustworthiness. And there are specificities that you need to take into account when navigating this area. A technical report, it's not an actual actionable standard. It's like a scientific report. It's like a scientific publication. It is a deliverable from the standards, but it can't be used by any legal framework. So if now in Europe we'd like to use for transparency, explainability, would like to use this, it will need to be transposed in a standardization, formal standardization process, which is a bit different. And here we see that we have some important parts, and I'll concentrate on those. The standard provides the approaches to assess. So if you want to do conformity assessment, for example, you are able to do it at a macro level, not low level technical. You are able to do it with this document. So you have assess and achieve availability, resiliency, reliability, accuracy, safety, security, and privacy. We need to take it with a grain of salt because are all these aspects present in equal portions, let's say? Some are treated in one paragraph and some are treated extensively. So when you want to have the standard actionable, that's still a challenge. Because in order to get certification, the standard needs to be actionable. We'll have a person which will do the assessment. It needs to have clear context, replicable. And then there are, of course, other aspects which are less of interest, associated threats and risks, possible mitigations, but these are still at a high level. So this level of trust which are actionable, they are out of scope. Nice document, interesting, but maybe will not be that useful in practice in the end. At the SEN and SENELEC level, the role is to identify and adopt international standards. And we spoke about the ISO IEC and the subcommittee 42. But the role is to focus on producing standardization deliverables. And these standardization deliverables, as highlighted here in red, they need to underpin the EU legislation and policies. What we have so far, we have a proposal, which is a policy. It is enough in order to have a request for harmonized standard, but it is not enough in order to have a request which can be published. In the membership of the SEN and SENELEC nationals, we see here that we have national committee of the 27 European Union countries, Turkey, United Kingdom, the Republic of Northern Macedonia, Serbia, and 3 countries of the European Free Trade Association, Iceland, Norway, and Switzerland. So all these members, they have a voting right. There is 1 member per country. This is different from the international level. In the international level, us as Luxembourg, as a small country, we have 1 vote. As, for example, the United States, they have 1 vote, we have 1 vote. In SEN and SENELEC, the participation is different. It is proportional to the participation, financial participation or support, which is provided by the member states. So Luxembourg, being a small country, has a smaller and less impactful vote. And we have countries as France or Germany, which are the most impactful. I didn't have the chance to see exactly for Turkey what is the percentage, and this varies. It can vary every year. Every country decides to invest more or less, and that can vary. So we underpin legislation, and we spoke. We have only the EU AI Act, which is a proposal, and which we can use. I provide also the source of this information so you can follow it later. The risk-based approach, we speak about trustworthiness, how we translate trustworthiness. We translate it risk-based. So we have this pyramid, and this pyramid here, it's a little bit misleading because it says that unacceptable risk, high risk, limited risk, and minimal risk, they are more or less the same let's say, size. The reality is that we have a really small portion of prohibited use, which is, for example, social scoring. This is prohibited. We have a small level, if we would go, it will be maybe around here, a small list of high-risk application. And this is an annex of the European AI Act proposal, Annex 2 and Annex 3, they both provide that. And it is specified that for high risk, it is permitted, the usage, subject to compliance. So compliance requires, again, standards. And the compliance to AI requirements, and its ex ante conformity assessment. One can't enter the market before having the conformity assessment, if it is in a high-risk application. I will give you some example of high-risk application. For example, recruitment. If there is bias in recruitment, or if there are sensitive information about the person which is a candidate, or the student which is candidating for a position in the university, if this sensitive information are used, the application is considered by default high risk, because sensitive information can be used, should not, but can be used. So it needs to pass for conformity assessment. Several other applications, mass surveillance, biometrics, they are also high risk applications. Scoring in the financial sector, credit scoring, for example, it is considered high risk. And I will explain you why it is high risk. just a brief, and I will invite you to read. I have it at the end. There is a nice overview from Mehtap on the implications of the financial sector. It was based on work done with the regulator, the financial regulator in Luxembourg. So for the credit scoring, this is a use case I contributed at the standardization level, and it is mentioned in the high-risk application. When a score it is established for a client, we have a weighted sum. So we have, for example, is the client, and I'm just oversimplifying, is the client house owner? There is a number of points, and there is a weight associated. So the number of points is multiplied by this weight. These weights, they are given subjectively by the subject matter expert, which is in the bank. So the credit officer subjectively creates this weighted sum. So now, as this is subjective and it needs to be uniform on the market, it is considered a high-risk application, and control needs to be foreseen, because we can completely ignore. Normally, we should take into account the objective, which is optimizing the chances of the user from the user perspective, from the client perspective. And we also need to take into account the objective, which is the objective of the bank, maximizing profits and reducing risk. But they are both contradictory and different. So as they are contradictory, the financial institution can choose only to follow its own interest and ignore the one from the user. Ideally, a best compromise solution should be attained, and they exist, and they are called Pareto solutions, from Wilfredo Pareto, which was an economist. So that will be a bit on the high risk. The limited risk, they are the AI system which have transparency obligation. If you are in front of a chatbot, you need to know if it is a human or if it is generated natural language understanding. So they are permitted subject to information and transparency obligation. The chatbot, for example, needs to specify at the beginning of the discussion, I'm not a human being, I am a generated language, a generated chatbot, generated natural language understanding. And the minimal risk are permitted with no restrictions. And in the minimal risk fall the majority of the products. In the high risk, you can consider also the health sector. So this is about how the requirements are in terms of risks. Now, if I'm going on the representation of the requirements, the artificial intelligence, let's say, team of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission did an analysis of the mapping of all existing standardization developments. So you see here IEEE, you see ISO, you see even you have DS, GS, there are different, all standardization available for which they had access. And they took the AI requirements. So these are the requirements that you see on the upper layer. They are the requirements extracted from the AI Act. So data and data governance, this is not new. This is coming from the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations, already there, and there is already standardization ongoing. Risk management system, if we have a closer look, there are some advancements, but if you look closely, for example, in the ISO and IEC level, risk management, we had technical reports. Then one other important part, so if you are developing an AI system, is keep an eye on the record keeping and the technical data. How do you document the entire AI process? And then you have the transparency and information to the user. And one aspect which is not at all covered at the ISO and IEC level is the human oversight. We need to have a human in the loop because we have approximation algorithms, and the human needs to intervene whenever there is a risk. But as there exists no standard, this is a requirement which is not fulfilled. So in the European standards, that will most likely be tackled. Then we have accuracy, robustness, cybersecurity. These are security-related aspects and also safety-related aspects. and there are standards, and some of them, they are quite advanced. And the last one would be the quality management system. What is the quality of the systems which are provided? And there, as you see, if there is any question, or if I overpass the time, please stop me.
Yeah, Emilia, maybe like you, it is just about time. If you can maybe summarize the speech, and we can have some time for questions, if it is okay for you.
Sure. So I had some words on the specific challenges, but we can quickly pass it. They were also intended for the questions. When we are doing certification, you need to think either you have a product, service, process, or system which is certified, subject object of conformity assessment. Either a person is accredited to do conformity assessment on solutions, on products, on services. So this is a person level, it is not an organization. And then we have the organization level, which is management system or body, which is an organization. And it can be conducted by the own manufacturer or supplier. Then it can be entrusted to second party or user or purchaser, or we speak about certification when it's a third party, it's an independent body or person. And voluntarily, conformity assessment falls under the first or second party, so this is not constraining. Then the GTC 21 identified that conformity assessment is a challenge, and I'm the co-convener of the Artificial Intelligence Conformity Assessment in the GTC 21. So we are working on tackling this challenge. There are several standardization initiatives that I mentioned. I will not go back to that. And if you are interested how they will be applied, there exist tools, software tools. So trustworthiness tools for standardization. I cited here some of the well-known, they are examples. They are not the only ones, they are not the most important. But as you see, if you want to test, there is traceability from Microsoft, but also IBM has a traceability or transparency. I cite here Google What If, fairness and bias, Facebook facets. It's just for you to have some tools to know that pragmatically it can be tested. Ethics is a big challenge. And we had a group in the IEC Sec 10, a group dedicated only to ethics. We worked for more than 1 year on that. The conclusion was that we need to impose ethics at all levels. But how do you quantify ethics? And this is something that everybody has a different opinion, or UNESCO has a different opinion, or OECD. And in the end, we all have values coming from our own background, personal background. We interpret them with norms at the geographical context. It might be at the country level or the region level. And then they are concretized when we have legal aspects like functionalities. For example, the interpretation is that we should not hit pedestrians with a car. The norm is that we should not hit because we agreed that in our region this is not acceptable. And then the concretization, there is a law which forbids and provides functionalities. As key takeaways, I would say be wise, standardize, because it will be too expensive once the standard will be present to get involved or to change anything. And they are supporting the legislation. And the UAI approach is a risk-based approach. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you for listening so far.
Thank you very much, Emilia, for your insights. As there were many also legislative reference in the presentation, would it be possible to share your presentation later with our AIPA members so that we can, like, they can refer, we can refer to the legislation if needed? Okay,
yes,
great.
some parts, I think some parts of it, as they are on the standardization, I will not be able to share them, but I will remove the information which are not to be distributed.
Of course, yeah. You can remove the part that you can share. That would be great if you can share. So now I think it is time for the questions. As I mentioned at the beginning, everyone, please feel free to ask your questions in English or Turkish. If it is in Turkish, we can happily translate the question and answer. Emilia, thank you again. And now we are waiting for questions.
Mehtap Hanım, ben sorayım, açılışı yapayım isterseniz.
Tabii süper olur. Buyurun başkanım.
Dear Emilia, first of all, I would like to give you a brief overview of our country. We all know that in the 1950s, Alan Turing and John McCarthy were the scientists who came up with the name of artificial intelligence. Let me show you the picture on the back of the 10 Turkish liras, our country. Ordinarius Professor Cahit Arf gave a lecture of artificial intelligence in 1958. Even this example is one of the best example of how closely interested our country is to technology. I hope we will come and reach to much better places in artificial intelligence. I have a classic question that I usually ask speakers. I want to ask you too. If you were the top person in artificial intelligence in the world, or a minister in your country, what would you do first? Thank you.
Thank you for this question and for the great insight. I will share also an insight and then I will answer the question. The co-convener I sharing work on the AI conformity assessment is Turkish. He's based in UK. He did his university studies in Turkey and then he continued in UK. So I have a really close connection also on that side on standardization. So you are really well represented. Giving advice to decision makers. I have been in the past in a role where I was in the position to give such advice. I was Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer in a public agency in Luxembourg, which was more of a security agency. So in that role, I had the privilege and I'm still able to give advice to the European Commission on the current artificial intelligence investments and monitoring of those investments. Of course, my opinion will be just one perspective. You need the power of the heterogeneous opinions. Artificial intelligence, as you mentioned, it's not new. Now we are in the era of large-scale adoption because we have computational power, so we have convergence in depth, and we can test several solutions in parallel, and we have also big data, so we have large pools of solutions. Now, we should be careful in using this term because artificial intelligence was forbidden, and as you mentioned, we had the creation of the term, and then we had winters of AI. So we should again be careful setting up expectations. We do not have general artificial intelligence, and we are not close to that. We have many open problems, and I had the privilege again of working in the Lawrence Centrum in Leiden in some of the open problems in AI. Still many to be tackled. We have now focused artificial intelligence. So you develop the AI system in a specific environment and it will function really well there. Now the question is not whether we should use AI. It's like electricity. Not everyone should understand all the functioning of the electricity in general. We use it because we trust and we have, like now I will give the example of aeronautics, we have rules, we have controls. Artificial intelligence is approximation, so we need controls. But nevertheless, we should not lose time because it is adopted, and before adoption is a too large scale, we need to put a framework. Europe was courageous putting this, and Turkey was courageous to put a strategy on a term which is abstract, you know. It is a risk putting a strategy on technologies which are quite new for large scale, and it requires skills. So I would say AI is an enabler. We have others. We have the quantum arriving. We are not close to singularity. So yes, we advance. We advance at large, and we have an economic impact, and it can support. In the pandemic, we saw that it can support to a certain extent. We have some simulations. I was in the supporting a bit in the research task force for COVID in February 2020. That was a long time ago. But we need to be careful. It doesn't solve all our problems, and it creates also this skills gap. So we need to be careful how the society as a whole embrace it and makes it beneficial, and how we are resilient. We have the Sustainable Development Goal that you all know of. But in this Sustainable Development Goal, I had the pleasure of working with World Economic Forum, but I didn't find resilience. And what we need with new technologies, of course, it's good to adopt them. We had the Industrial Revolution. We should not stop innovation, but we should be careful in embarking everyone. So I always think digital skills is one important layer, and education is another important layer, because the AI gives rapid access to information. So rapid access to information means the education paradigm need to change. We need to learn all our lives. So long life learning will become, as we saw it in MIT Singapore, and the United Nations Development Program published the Knowledge Index. We need to evolve the education in that direction. So there are many parts which are non-technical, and this is what I find amazing, and Mehtap shared about the 17 working groups that you have. You are not focusing only on the technical side. You are focusing on reaching impact and looking at it from different facets and with different experts. You can't do this only with mathematicians. It comes from different areas, geophysics, it comes from economy. Artificial intelligence as a paradigm comes from all the areas. We have Feynman-Clark theory, fusion and fission. We had in geophysics, even in physics, we have simulated annealing. These processes, they have different terms, different vocabulary, but they were developed in parallel, neural networks and other paradigms.
Emilia, thank you very much for this answer. Başkanım,
Thank you, Emilia.
Did you answer? Did this answer your question?
Kayhan Bey var, üyemiz.
Tamam, evet, ondan alacağım. Kayhan Bey, buyurun.
Merhabalar. Hello. I would like to thank for this wonderful and comprehensive presentation to Mrs. Tantar, and also thank to AIPA family for this beautiful meeting. I want to ask, is AI and institutions like ISO really ready for standardization? And if not, how long does it take to complete that? Thank you.
That's a really interesting question, and really it goes to the core of the matter. The time it takes is not because AI is not ready. It's just our human social agreement on the same terms. You know, researchers, they have different school of thought, and the standardization in AI comes also from research. So that means the school of thought, they use different terms, and it's not a question of not understanding each other, but agreeing on the usage of one term or another. This discussion was long, but let's face it, if we keep this discussion too long and we are not pragmatic and accepting a compromise, the legislation doesn't have the technical support and will have unstable solutions on the market. So we have this butterfly effect everywhere for the traffic lights, for autonomous driving, for many applications. And there are so many risks, and Mehtap, I'm sure she can provide more insights on what are the risks from the AI application side, but also what are the risks inside AI of not using the right kernel and so on. So standardization reached consensus. So we have 9 published standards, 4 which are only in AI. Now we have a deadline. And the European Commission stated it really nicely in the EU AI Act. There is Article 40, which speaks about we will use harmonized standards. But Article 41 states something really interesting, common specification. If the European standardization or the standardization bodies, they are not ready when the legislation is ready, we'll start working on common specification and we'll give the common specification. So I think all the industrial actors, they have a real important interest in getting this done and getting a consensus, because if not, there will be something, some technical definition which comes outside. Of course, it will be an independent group of experts, but now there is a possibility for everyone to participate, from research, from academia, and also from the industry. I do hope it answers your question. If not, please let me know.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilia. Asko soru için de çok teşekkürler. Baha Bey, galiba sizin bir sorunuz var. Emilia, Baha is one of our youngest researchers in AIPA. Baha Bey, buyurun.
Thank you for hearing. Thank you, Mr. Küçükşavanoğlu and AIPA for this meeting. And thank you, Ms. Tantar, for your attendance and inspirational presentation. Let me introduce myself. I'm Baha Kesici. I'm climate activist and research volunteer at AIPA. I have a question about element software of Black Swan. I have made a research about machine learning technology and apply fields. I was really impressed about multi-armed bandit system. I checked the website of the Black Swan technologies. In the site, the paradigm shift in analytic enabled decisions is too highlighted about element software. What is the important in decisions of element? What is the difference about does it make itself choice?
Yeah, thank you. This is a really insightful question. So you really grasp the details. Thank you for that. So in terms of Black Swan Lux, we're a spin-off of the University of Luxembourg, and technology we developed over the years. So it was not only in Luxembourg, but we worked in the Mathematics Institute of Bordeaux, in INRIA Bordeaux. And in there we had the possibility of applying with Atomic Energy Commission on different application, high sensitivity applications. And also it was an interesting case in the Dunkirk. So I give you just the context and then I will go to the technical details. In Dunkirk, we had the mooring of liquefied gas tankers. It's the second largest European, let's say, port, I think it's called. And it's for the industry. So we had this resonance effect, the waves, if they are at low frequency and they're repeating, you reach the resonance effect and then you get the unmooring of all the liquefied gas tankers at once. What does it mean? These waves, they are quite difficult to analyze because they have multimodality. And then you have more than 2,000, modes that are possible. And the challenge was that we had to run that on workstation. I would call it like this because it was not like a laptop like you see nowadays. It was a workstation they had in a corner and they said, we should do this risk analysis or should do it there. So let's do this kind of analysis, not with big data, not with, let's do it in real time. This is what we call lean data. So the data comes and you just crunch it and you use it. And obtain also results in real time. So that was real event simulation. And how we do real event simulation, okay, we need to go on the queue of distribution. And we didn't use, you mentioned the multi-arm bandit. This is more when you need to reach a consensus and you are in a social, you model it as a social environment. In this, it was a pure technical environment. So there was no social context. And we managed to do it and to have simulations of risk, real event simulation, when this unmooring, of course, it still runs there. So it was this capacity of doing really complex problem by changing the kernel. So that's the contribution. It's a Feynman-Kac kernel. It's based on particle methods, and we had our own conference based on this particle methods. They are called particle. It's a paradigm in artificial intelligence, like neural networks. You can consider it. And we had 7 published volumes. And we traveled the world also with this paradigm because we went, first we were in Bordeaux, then we moved to Luxembourg. From Luxembourg, we moved in Leiden to the Lorentz Centrum. Then we moved to Chinese Academy of Science in Beijing, to Mexico City, to the CINVESTAF, the National Research Center, and worked with Professor Coelho in the matter. And we tried to gather all these people because AI was not a word at that time. So all the people which are in probability, probability statistics, set-oriented numerics, and evolutionary computation, the different paradigms. Because they were speaking the same language, and we created a doctoral school, which is still ongoing, and so on. But the paradigm is synthetic in the sense that it doesn't use social consensus, like in the multi-arm bandwidth, or social elements. So it is purely mathematical. Now, the reason that we do not, and we should potentially do more on that regard, is that we are preparing this paradigm as we understood at the point that we launched, that we are forerunners. You know, we were in front of the market. Nobody heard about AI, so we saw there were initial steps. And we developed our solution for specific markets. We understood that the human body is one of the most complex systems, so we applied on watches. So you do AI on watches without any connection to the exterior, so it's fully secure because you don't communicate with the exterior. No information is kept, and we have an individual profile, which is a stochastic model kept on the watch of each individual person. So this is our capability. But now this capability is of interest also at the European level, so we plan to use it as a test bench for other AIs. So to test their security levels for certification and conformity assessment.
Emilia, sorry for interrupting. In the interest of time, is it okay if maybe we take two other quick questions? And it is, I think, it has been quite a long and a very fruitful discussion, and also due to the time difference, it is becoming quite late, even later in Turkey. So we will get two last questions, if it is okay. And I saw Ahmet Karaca. Do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'm appreciated for the great presentation this evening. I want to add a point in the beginning to the question of Mr. Kayhan. During the presentation, we heard information about ISO, IEC, JTC1, SC42. Wow, it's very long, which is an international standards committee as far as I understand. Although the foundation of SC42 and many associated national committees seem to indicate that AI is ready for standardization, and you also gave the answer, it can be argued past attempts that AI standardization were unsuccessful, and that AI technology still lacks the level of trust needed for widely agreed standards. As a bank professional, I'm working in a sector which regulations and standards take high importance. So I believe the studies you mentioned are very precious, and you also talked about some banking applications on AI. On this point, I would be happy to hear your ideas about if the banks, or let's say financial institutions, use the AI technology advantage in an ethical way or not currently. I hope I'm clear with the question. Thank you.
Yes. So first of all, thank you for this. I will first refer to the Mehtap work, which is really from the sector, and which did an analysis of the Luxembourg CSSF, the Commission of Surveillance of the Financial Sector. They released a white paper on AI, and Mehtap did an analysis that I will highly recommend because it goes really to the specific points. I also worked with the regulator, the financial regulator. I did the training of the board of the financial regulator, Luxembourg financial regulator on AI. And one point, because the training is always an exchange and you understand the domain better. One point that I would emphasize there is that the financial regulator concluded that the AI solutions which are employed in the banks, they are coming either from procurement, either they are own brewed, so they are created internally. And then the question is, the ones which come from the procurement, as they are introducing a risk in the bank, should the AI provider receive the license, or should the bank receive the license in the end? Who's liable for that? And this is a really important question. because now AI providers, they don't face any regulations. So you can develop and you state it is really nice and yeah, I just put on the market. You don't have any tests. And even the tests which will be available, we need to be careful on that because they will test what we know as risk. And AI induces many new risks that are known to us because they were not tested large scale. And on AI, if I speak about, for example, anti-money laundering, this is the domain I worked on. For anti-money laundering, what is the important information that you need? You need to have a clear picture on transactions worldwide. So the ones which have the solutions, AI solutions, which have users all over the world, they are the best solutions. It's not about the algorithms. It's about the power of the data, the relevance of the data. And currently, when I did assessment for this kind of solutions, there exists one solution which has more than 55% of the worldwide market in the financial sector. So that means it has more than 55% of the worldwide data needed for anti-money laundering. So can you really make a competition in these cases when you have data concentration? There are many open questions, and I will strongly advise to follow up with Mehtap. She has the best understanding there.
Ahmet Bey, isterseniz daha sonra e-mail'le de bütün bu konuyla ilgili paylaşabiliriz.
Çok teşekkürler.
Rica ederim. Başka son soru var mı? A last question, if there is any. If not, then can I kindly ask our president to do the closing speech, and then we have a small present for Emilia, and then we will, as part of our usual ritual, we will take a family photo as a souvenir of that moment. But the floor is yours, dear president.
Gökhan. 1 minute, please. Dear Emilia, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and for taking your time for us. We all listened to you with great motivation. If you escape, we donated a science kit to our youth in Turkey on behalf of you as a memory of today. We would like to host you in Turkey as soon as possible with great pleasure.
Thank you. That's an amazing initiative. And I think you already do a lot for the community, and that reaches even greater impact. I thank you for the time and for the patience at this late hour and for organizing this so beautifully, even the up-your preparation and so on. It was a clear example of high-class professionalism, and I highly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will forward the certificate to you, Emilia, as a memory for today.
If you allow me, I will publish it on LinkedIn. I have some followers there, so that maybe that will reach more impact, and you will have others which will contribute.
It is absolutely fine. We would be grateful.
Emilia is like a phenomenon on LinkedIn. She has many followers, and I see her as an influencer on LinkedIn. So
that would be great gesture. Thank you.
Gökhan Bey, is it the time of our family photo now?
Yeah, it's time.
Okay, Emilia, we are taking a photo as a memory of that event, so that we keep as a souvenir.
Kameraları açarsa müsait olan arkadaşlarımız.
Evet. Selim will count back from 3 and then we'll take a photo.
Kamerayı açan var mı diğer arkadaşlarım?
Evet, kamerasını müsait olanlar açarsa arkadaşlar böyle bir hatıra fotoğraf çekilelim bugün için. Selin Hanım siz.
Sayacağım, başlıyorum. 1, 2, 3. Evet. Bir kere daha alacağım, bir saniye. Evet, teşekkürler.
Evet, herkese çok teşekkürler.
Çok teşekkür ederiz değerli vaktiniz için, bizi dinlediğiniz için. Yeah, thank you very much again. And bir sonraki etkinlikte görüşmek
Thank you so
üzere.
much, Emilia.
Thank you,
Thank
Thank
Emilia.
you. Looking forward to
Thank
see
you.
you next work.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Mehtap. And
No, thank you to
everyone.
you. And then if there are any follow-up, we can do later. We can speak as well. But thank